In this video, we're going to take you into an interview that I conducted a few weeks back with a chemical engineer named Valentin who used to work for the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world. So if you're an engineer who wants to work on solving complex health diseases like COVID-19, this video is perfect for you. We're going to talk all about what it's like to be in that role, how to get there, how vaccines are actually developed, and more. And we're starting right now. Hey 1% Nation, I'm Jake Voorhees and welcome back to the 1% Engineer Show, where we empower young engineers to rise to the top 1% of their career. So if this is you, make sure you hit the notification bell and subscribe. There's plenty of good stuff in the description, including a link to the YouTube channel of Valentin. So make sure you check out Val's channel and subscribe. Also, you can see the 1% Engineer Kit, access to our Discord server, along with the new IG page ran by a cool engineer named Rose. So please check out those links in the description. Do you want to work on vaccines and changing the course of human healthcare? Comment below. Without further ado, guys, let's jump right into this interview with Valentin. Enjoy. Hey, 1% Nation. Welcome back to the show. Today, I cannot wait to jump into this conversation with a chemical engineer named Valentin that has worked at the biggest manufacturer for vaccines in that industry. So today, we're talking all about the development for the COVID-19 vaccine, what it looks like, what we can expect in terms of duration. Should we be talking about herd immunity and everything under that vaccine expertise. So I cannot wait to jump into this content today. So thanks again for being here. Valentin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to 1% Nation? Tell us how is it that you ended up working at one of literally the biggest vaccine manufacturer ever? You can talk about your time at L'Oreal, another massive brand that you worked with. But Valentin, who are you? Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Jake. Thanks for inviting me. So my name is Valentin Lashenko. I'm a chemical engineer from Ryerson University, located in Toronto, Canada. And I got into Sanofi Pasteur by chance. It was through a co-op placement. I applied for like maybe hundreds of different placements. And then I was selected for two of the interviews. So I had two interviews back to back in the middle of the exam season. But I ended up selecting one of the offers through the, actually it was the supplier quality management department. Yeah, so that was kind of my experience. Again, so Sanofi is one of the biggest, it's the third biggest pharmaceutical manufacturer in the world, and it's the biggest vaccine manufacturer in the world. So it's located, one of their facilities is in Toronto, and they have an entire campus there. I'm talking like 6-7 buildings, and right now they're building, they have something called the Building 100, which is where they produce a lot of their like trialed vaccines that is new vaccines that they're putting into production. So they also have the capacity to produce 600 million doses per year, and that's a lot.
That's incredible. That's incredible. 600 million doses is a lot. And really quickly, what was your role? When I look back at my preview into we worked on $2 billion infrastructure projects, and I could really dial in behind the scenes as to what was going on and what I was up to. In terms of that for you, when you worked at this big company, at this vaccine manufacturer, what the team that you were a part of, what were you guys actually doing?
So what we were actually doing, the role was called supplier quality management. It's a very, very new team within the supply chain department. So what we were actually doing there is we were trying to validate that the materials coming in, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, the excipients, meaning the other stuff inside of the vaccine. The active pharmaceutical ingredient is actually what causes the vaccine to work, as well as the packaging, secondary packaging, primary packaging, like vials, like labels on the actual packaging. We were trying to make sure that the materials coming in to the actual manufacturing facility, to the campus, with their paperwork are exactly the same ones that are written in the SOP. SOP is a standard operating procedure, which is heavily regulated by the FDA. So you have to follow these standards and these procedures as to how to do things so that they're reproduced to be the same quality within the same ingredients, roughly to speak. That's why it's really, really crucial. So what we were doing is we were validating whether the paperwork of the materials are always consistent. They're always the same. There's no changes in the chemicals. There's no changes in the packaging. And if there are, then we have to inform the respective departments so that they can check whether it affects their manufacturing process, it affects their packaging, it affects anything within their field of work.
Yeah, this is the one thing, guys, that's considerably different around biomedical engineering, or really the medical industry in general, pharmaceuticals, what Val is talking about in terms of vaccine development. Because if you get it wrong, if you send something to market too early, right, you could have devastation on your hands. And this is the big difference between like software engineering and civil engineering versus biomedical engineering. People can't necessarily die if your Facebook update fails, right? Financial data, right. You could have like autonomous planes that crash, but for the most part, you don't have massive potential to lose human life. In the vaccine industry, you do, right? And in fact, I know all of you 1% Nation members out there have read stories of bad vaccines going to market. And that's one of the concerns now. We're literally trying to rush out this vaccine. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but it's good that you were on the team, Val, that was responsible for making sure that this thing has what you say it has. And then ultimately, that is a result of, does this vaccine do what you intend for it to do? Because when you rush it out, it doesn't always happen, right? So thanks for that context, Val. Let's get right into it and talk about COVID-19 vaccine. There are so many people who are interested in the progression of this vaccine, who's actually going to come up with it. At one point, there were 100 different organizations. There's a video that came out May 1st, 100 different groups working on a vaccine. Today, news came out that China is testing a vaccine on their military. And I think a few other organizations are testing now. So that quickly we are here, okay? But here's the main question, Val. Let's take a big step back, right? What does even vaccine development look like? I know there's multiple ways to approach it. Let's talk about Vaccination 101. What does it look like to even from start soup to nuts to develop a vaccine? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so vaccine manufacturing has specifically to do with decoding the RNA. So that is part of the DNA of the virus, and then taking away some of the active DNA components of the virus, some of the enzymes of the virus itself. So imagine you would have a virus with generally different types of enzymes, and you remove some of the groups that are causing some of the symptoms that you see. For example, you're seeing a lot of like digestion and cough. So you remove that specific antigen so that your body can develop antibodies faster to it. So when you actually, so when you inoculate or inject the vaccine into your bloodstream, your body has enough time to identify the vaccine and to build something that will cover it, kind of like a sleeve, to make sure that it doesn't penetrate your T cells and your blood cells that are going in your path. This will make sure, that's one of the forms. The other form is to actually take a protein and basically split it into different parts using UV light or other different forms, which kills the virus. So those are the two different forms of vaccines that you could see. Those are very, very common. So one is the mRNA vaccine and the other one is a protein-based vaccine.
Right. And one of these is far more sophisticated than the other. I was reading about how there's one method that any country can do, and it can happen a little more rapidly. One of these is just a little more sophisticated than the next, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Which one is that? Which one is the preferred, more advanced one?
The more advanced one is the mRNA, which stands for messenger RNA vaccine, because it's basically like coding the RNA of the virus itself. That is the more sophisticated method, definitely.
See, very good. Okay, so this is great, Val. And one of the things that we talked about is that, in the conversation around the development for a vaccine, there's a lot of misnomers. There's a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of people who they walk around and they consider themselves anti-vaxxers. I'm sure 1% Nation, you've heard about these people. And whether you're skeptical on vaccine technology or not, or whether you're going to get the flu vaccine before COVID, or whether you're going to get the COVID-19 vaccine or not, for example, I'm not sure if I would even do this, 1% Nation. I don't know. So regardless of that, we know that vaccines are a good thing. These anti-vaxxers are crazy. That's my belief, But Val, let's ask you. Let's talk about. You have some myths that that are very common misnomers about vaccinations and the development of vaccines. Let's talk about this. Let's debunk some of these myths.
Yeah, absolutely, Jake. So let me debunk some of the most common myths. So myth number one: vaccines cause autism. There was a very famous paper by Andrew Wakefield in 1997. Who was a British surgeon, and he wrote an article and published a paper in a very famous journal that talks about measles, the correlation between autism and vaccination. Now, the article suggested that measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine had increased autism in British children. The paper later was actually discredited for some serious procedural errors, some conflict of interest, financial conflict of interest, and ethical violations. However, even though the paper was discredited, it was about several years after. So as you could imagine, it was in mainstream media at the time, and a lot of people got the notion that, hey, vaccines may actually cause autism. So that was myth number one. Myth number two.
Let's talk about this really quickly. So as a TEDx organizer, this is great. As a TEDx organizer, when I introduced a speaker with autism, this was pre-COVID, last March. It is 1 in 33 American men are walking around somewhere on the autistic spectrum, right? Like you live every single day of your human life interacting with particularly men, who is 4 times more common. So in women, it's like 1 in 128. But with men, it's a 3% chance. It's 1 in 33, wow. So like you're interacting with people who are on the spectrum every single day. So to think that something like vaccination is causing it, it's like they don't have a clue what's causing it. And there's so many people walking around with it. So this is really interesting. I'm glad you cleared that up for us. What is myth number 2, Val?
Yeah, so myth number 2 is actually infant immune systems can't handle so many vaccines. So a lot of North Americans are scared, and not only North Americans, people in general that, don't really have a lot of information to go off of. Infant immune systems are actually stronger than you might think. When I was a child, for example, and when many others were children, we got a lot of different vaccinations for a reason, so that our bodies can adapt and grow with antibodies that are capable of building an immune system to these vaccines. So infant immune systems are stronger than you might think, like I said before. Based on the number of antibodies present in the blood, a baby would theoretically be able to respond to about 10,000 vaccines at one time. Even if they're all scheduled at once, it wouldn't require more than 0.1% of the body's immune capacity to respond to that. So the scientific community is purely theoretical measuring this. The immune system itself, however, could never truly be overwhelmed. The cells in the system are always replenished. And in reality, babies are always exposed to countless bacteria, countless dirt, wherever they go, wherever they climb, and that actually helps them build their immune system and immune responses to all the different kinds of bacteria and viruses that are present in today's world.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. This is great. So this is sort of the second core myth. I think we have some more here that people seem to be confused about. So we'll talk about natural immunity or herd immunity. We can save that one, which I think is myth number 3, because that's another large aspect of this conversation. That's the third myth that you have here. So maybe we'll just save that one. But this is really good because I hear a lot of my friends, I'm 33, just turned 33, guys. Geez, birthday's happened.
Happy birthday,
7 days ago. Thank you, Val. And it's like now all of a sudden you're 33 or a year older. But a lot of my kids a lot of my friends are having kids. And this conversation does happen at little social gatherings and parties. Like, are you going to vaccinate your kids or not? Because there are these videos online of some family claiming that their child looked like this, and then they came home, and then they have video footage of them post-vaccination. Now they're acting weird, they're acting erratic. So really quickly, without diving into that, is there any other sort of explanation for this, why that may be happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of anxiety around vaccines. I'm sure that you've heard of the placebo effect. It's a psychological effect where people that think they've received medication actually reduce the amount of feeling the symptoms that they have been feeling before. So for instance, if you've had a cold and you've actually took a fake pill, without knowing it's fake pill, you think it's an Advil or a Tylenol, you would actually feel less symptoms just psychologically thinking about it. A lot of the symptoms are reduced and minimized by the placebo effect. So that's a very common thing.
Interesting. I wonder what the specialists would say about the children, though, who may not know, like a 2-year-old who may not really fully be aware.
That's right. So the children are not really aware, but sometimes you have to distract the child. Give him, tell him a little bit of a story while he's getting vaccinated. Children up until about 3 to about 4 years of age don't actually retain long-term memory. So all the vaccinations that you've done prior to the 3-year-old, they become 3 years old, don't actually stay with them for life. They don't remember them.
Interesting. This is funny. Yeah. Because I've seen some scary videos online. This is good stuff. Yeah. Thanks for all that context, Val. So let's
no problem. Yeah.
Now that you've let us know about what it takes to develop a vaccine, what are some of the misnomers and some of the myths, let's jump right into where we are today. So as a recap, guys, here's what happened. Sometime in late November, December of 2019, China recognized that they had this awkward pattern of people getting sick, and I think there were 44 cases of it all originating back to this village in Wuhan. And before, I think it was one of the last days of the year, sometime in December, China alerted the World Health Organization, which is located in Europe, that we think we have an issue going on. We think there is a novel, meaning new coronavirus not being something that is new. It's a type of virus that we see it happen over and over and over again with different strains since I think the 40s or the 50s. Okay. And then the World Health Organization was a little bit sluggish to alert, because then all of a sudden it's in Italy, and then Europe has a rampant problem. And then before we know it, it's on the West Coast of America, and even before the East Coast of America, which is the economic heartbeat of the world. Because 150, half of America lives all on the East Coast. Everyone was really slow to react to this. We didn't shut down in America until about March 16th or so. So this virus has been going on for 6, 7, 8 months, but we've really only taken it seriously for 3. So we draw back. What we're really talking about is vaccine progression. At one point, about 60 days ago, it came out that there was about 100 organizations, 100 different groups working on a vaccine. I'm not sure what that count is today, but we know now, news came out today, that China is doing human tests on their military. There's a couple other organizations and countries that are doing testing. So why don't you give us, Val, as an expert here, what's the full recap? Where are we now? What is it looking like in terms of vaccine progression today as we film this June 30th, 2020?
Yeah, absolutely. So as of today, June 30th, we have about 8.3 million people with confirmed cases of COVID, and 450 people who died. This is according to the World Health Organization. 450,000 people who have died due to COVID-19, according to the World Health Organization. So as of today, you're absolutely right, Jake. There's over 100 different partnerships between companies, research institutions like universities and even governments that are funding and basically funneling money into developing a solution for this, which is a vaccine. Some of the most common partnerships are even across different nations. So China working with the U.S., but majority of it is still within different countries. It's like the race to the finish line for a cure. Some of the most common partnerships include BioNTech, Pfizer, and Fosun Pharma, working for an mRNA vaccine that was explained a little bit earlier in this video. The Imperial College in London and Morningside Ventures, they're working to create a self-amplifying RNA vaccine as well. Inovio is studying the DNA-based vaccine on mice, so they're doing mice testing and animal testing. And there's a lot of different companies and actually partnerships, I should really say, not individual companies, because most of them have partnered with 2 or 3 other organizations to develop the solution. That are working towards protein-based vaccines as well. This includes actually 2 of the companies. So Sanofi, the company that I've previously worked for, they have partnered with GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, and they're trying to engineer a protein solution that grows inside infected cells, and they're able to produce a very, very large capacity of these. So if this type of vaccine were to be successful, in research on, then they would be able to scale this vaccine to the masses very, very quickly and easily. For example, there's a company called Moderna, and they're supposed to be the leading edge, the leading frontier of vaccine manufacturing, and they're trying to create this innovative mRNA vaccine that is approved for human trials. So they're currently on stage 2, meaning that they're testing their vaccine on hundreds of people. And they're trying to test it at warp speed. That means that they're being tested on volunteers, and it is heavily, heavily funded by billions of dollars from different government funding, even though the vaccine has no proof of concept that it actually even works yet. This is a very ambitious effort, and they are hoping to enter phase 3 anytime as soon as July or August. But we don't know exactly what the future holds. So this would be a very, very interesting challenge for them.
Yeah, wow. What a aggressive timeline that some of these organizations have. Thanks for all that insight and all of that expertise that you have around that. Now, what a great time to talk about this. This is one thing that a lot of people are curious about. So again, we have this timeline, right? If the reason why it's called coronavirus 19, COVID-19, is that it was discovered in 2019, it was alerted to the World Health Organization last year, right? It's not a 2020 virus, it was last year, okay?
Correct.
And here we are, literally today, in 5 hours, here we are, 7 p.m. Eastern time at June 30th. We'll be halfway through 2020, okay? So
that's right.
Even if they got started working on a vaccine the minute it was acknowledged, we're only 7 months into a quest to find a vaccine. Realistically, this effort to discover this novel for this strain, the novel Corona-19 virus, we're maybe, if we can get away with 3 months of progress, maybe, okay? But here's the question. How long does it really take? What is the safe expected duration for vaccine development in your experience when you were working for that company, Val? What is the right amount of time?
Absolutely. So if this is a brand new vaccine, right, we're talking about something that has never been created before and there's no patent on it. This is also called a branded pharmaceutical. It usually takes on average anywhere between 5 to 15 years. The main reason for it being is traditional vaccine manufacturing is a very lengthy process. And a lot of the studies take a long period of time, because what happens is you inoculate an egg, generally speaking, it's an egg with a vaccine, and you watch it as it develops within the cells and how it affects the bodies in the cells. And you study that for a long periods of time. So this takes usually hundreds of thousands, if not millions of eggs, and billions upon billions of dollars of funding. So this generally takes a very long time. And then there's generally a patenting process, which also, to remain confidentiality and to remain the manufacturing rights for this, it also takes quite a bit of time. Now, in theory, this could be expedited, but it's extremely risky, extremely, because a vaccine is something that goes directly into your bloodstream and directly through your heart. There's no organ that kind of pre-processes it. Well, I mean, except for the liver slowly, but if you're inoculating it or injecting it in your vein and it goes directly to your heart, it's called intravenous, which means that there's nothing really stopping it. There's no filtering mechanism. It's straight in your body, and the effects are really unknown. That's why it's really important. Truly and really, the ambitious effort by these companies to manufacture a vaccine from 12 to 18 months, I think is extremely risky and could have potentially very lethal consequences for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, which would be actually a lot worse than COVID-19 itself.
Yeah, what an unbelievable thing. Because thanks for that, Val. Because we see a lot of, for some reason, there's a lot of autofills and a lot of attention on September. So I don't know if an organization or two or some of these leaders have insinuated that they can have a vaccine out by September. I don't know why. September is also a monumental time because life goes on pause during the summer, right? Except unless you're like a beach going sort of seasonal business, everything is on pause during summer. Summer is a time for making vacations and holidays. Schools are not happening. So all these school districts around the world who literally were scrambling and in some frantic disarray to escape the school year, really life doesn't start back up again until September. So I think that's the conversation, is that like, if we want to save the second half of 2020, we need a vaccine by September. So I feel like people have artificially manufactured that finish line as a finish line that looks like success for escaping this virus. But that's sort of the disparity that we're in, is that there is economic recovery priorities and there are human health and society priorities, because reopening your restaurant and saving your grandmother that you might expose to coronavirus because you went to that restaurant last night, those are two very different agendas. And we need to evaluate what is important, because focusing on a vaccine for September, in terms of saving human life, that's not the priority. So love that. Thanks for adding this context. Val, are there instances of vaccines being released too early and killing a shitload of people?
Yeah, absolutely, Jake. So, like the incidents with polio in 1955, 250 people who were being tested, who were actually volunteers to be tested for the vaccine, were inoculated with the polio vaccine. But it ended up very lethally for them. The vaccine was not successful, and it ended up killing them.
Wow. So we've seen what it's like to hastily put out a vaccine, especially something that like polio that's so debilitating. And I think a lot of people would prefer losing their life to coronavirus than having a life of polio. So that's a horrible thing. So yeah, we need to be very, very careful about releasing medical technologies into the world, because we've seen what it's like to put them out too early, and loss of life or degradation of human health. These are just things to be avoided. So thanks for that, Val.
Absolutely, Jake. And after that polio incidents, that's why the FDA started, bodies like the FDA and governing bodies for pharmaceuticals and for vaccines have started being more active. They've started forming, and they've started, actually regulating this much more heavily, which is why we know now the vaccine industry to be heavily regulated, some of the most heavily regulated, very similar to the aerospace industry for a fact.
Yeah, it's gotta be. Okay, Val, thanks for all of that. This is great. So if you have to be highly concerned about the testing of a vaccine before we release it, we know the ramifications of putting out a vaccine too early. And at the same time, there is this need for, but release a vaccine. We need this to continue moving forward. So then the question is this, okay, how do you know what is the right balance? What is the criteria for healthcare and vaccine manufacturing professionals to be confident that this vaccine is ready for basically mass market public testing? How do we know?
There is no real black and white answer here. Unfortunately, according to the World Health Organization, the FDA, which actually there is a FDA in each country. It's not only the USA, which is a misconception. There is FDA Russia, there is FDA China, there's FDA all over the world, right? That's why it's a multinational organization. What they do is they look at the studies. So after these vaccines have passed all 3 stages of studies, 3 phases, after thousands of people have been vaccinated and some time has passed for them to see the results, they start studying the results. They start studying the the symptoms. They read the basically the level of health. They look at some of these cells. They take blood samples and they look at some of the basically development in the immune system and the T cells, number of hemoglobin cells. They look at some of these indicators and they see whether the body has actually been able to develop an antibody for it, so build up an immune system for it, or whether the vaccine has not been successful. In either case, according to a consensus, many different scientists have to come to a consensus, which is an agreement that yes, this vaccine is in fact helping, and it's able to cause the body to develop an immune system and antibodies for this specific virus, or no, we have to continue testing, we have to tweak something, we have to redevelop it a little bit further.
Very cool, very cool. And it's funny how this goes, because when you embark on such a journey that is discovering something that is so far-reaching in terms of its impact, like this need to get it right is at an all-time high. So I appreciate that context on the right perspective on how do we know, because I see this one. There's these intense concerns. It's like there's no middle ground here. You know how we talk about in America. I know you're over here in Canada.
Canada.
And guys, I lived in Canada for 4 years, and I love Canadians. But here in America, we talk about how there's no middle class, okay? So in this conversation, I find there's like no middle ground. You have people who are like intensely concerned about the threat of releasing a vaccine too early. And then we have people who they want that vaccine released yesterday, right? It's a really interesting conversation that I find like it's like this gutted central portion of the spectrum, and then you have these diametrically opposite views. So I really appreciate your perspective there, Val. To be honest with you, I think we have covered most of the questions and concerns around the development of a vaccine without the elephant in the room, which is the final one, the final question, the final aspect, which is this: around the development of the vaccine. A lot of people say, well, why don't we just do what Sweden is doing right now and just do this thing that they call herd immunity? Essentially, that's what we've done with the typical influenza virus. I don't have a flu vaccine. I don't think most Americans have a flu vaccine. But for the most part, if you aren't very old, if you don't have some sort of bronchial condition, the flu is not going to kill you, right? We've developed this like herd immunity is what we're talking about, right? And so people are talking about this. Sweden as a country, as the most fulfilled, happiest country on earth, based on lots of studies, as a leading nation in their perspectives on how to do things, has announced that they don't care about a vaccine. They're just going to do herd immunity. So let's talk about that. How viable is a strategy like herd immunity? What are the pros and cons? What do you think about this, Val?
My personal opinion on herd immunity is it's not a bad idea. Naturally, we as a species, we develop and adapt to a lot of the different viruses and bacteria that are out there in the world. And, we can't always be vaccinated against everything. If the vaccine does exist out there, and it has been for a while, it has been, tested upon many different hundreds of people, if not thousands of people. And it's been proven to be successful without any other side effects, lethal side effects or debilitating side effects. I think this should definitely, you should consider taking it. But otherwise, if you believe that this vaccine is ineffective or it might have some side effects for you, right, depending on your body itself, some vaccines cannot be, not everybody could be getting the same vaccine always. For example, if you're missing a thyroid gland or if you're missing, a kidney, some vaccines aren't the best for you because they might trigger an immune system response, which might attack some of your other cells. So you should really be careful, and you should always consult with your physician, and with your doctor, whether this vaccine is compatible with your body specifically in each situation.
Wow.
So yeah, absolutely. This is crucial. So as for the herd mentality, I believe that it's not a bad idea. If you believe that this will at least mentally put you at ease and give you some peace of mind. It's very important.
Yeah.
Because as we know, the psychology of a human is connected with their health. So if you feel that you are safe, and if you believe that you are healthy, then you most likely will be healthy.
Yeah. This is hugely true, 1% Nation. Honestly, you want to know a really good way to get sick is just walk around thinking that you're about to get sick, and you probably will. And this is a huge part of overcoming dramatic health illnesses, like ailments like cancer and things like this. Like if you think you're gonna die, it's over. It's a wrap. Like you have to have faith, and what we're talking about is what they call physiological health, in the sense that like your physical health is ingrained in what's going on with your mental psychology. And the more that you think about being healthy, and the more that everything's going to be fine and you're confident about the future, the likelihood that your immune system and your body is not releasing stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which block your immune system, these things, like thinking you're okay, actually does result in you being okay. Literally just Google what cortisol, feeling you're under stress, feeling like you're under pressure. What cortisol does is it blocks your immune system, guys. Because if you're under threat and under stress and you think you're going to die, why do you need your immune system? I need to survive right now. So it is true what Val is saying, is that state of mind and the awareness of what you need to be doing to actually overcome this ailment, this health condition, this disease, even if it's as simple as a typical cold. This is hugely important. So I'm glad you mentioned this, Val. So with that being said, Val, I think you have answered all of the primary coronavirus vaccination progression questions. Do you have any other final words of wisdom for 1% Nation? Maybe about career choices in terms of what it's like to be someone who's on the forefront of making change and progress, and a little bit of insight of if people want to work on vaccines, if people want to develop technologies that could change the course of human healthcare, what does that look like? Because you've been there, you've done it. So what are the final words of wisdom to engineers who want to do some of the things that you've done, Val? What would you say to them?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So, if you want to be at the forefront of vaccine development, of pharmaceutical development, pharmaceutical technology, I think that, a background in pharmaceuticals or a background in chemistry or chemical engineering is good. Moving forward, I do believe that technology will actually help the development, especially the early stage and discovery stages of vaccines. So I would really recommend studying like bioinformatics, taking a class on bioinformatics, taking a class on programming, taking a class on AI and, machine learning, because there's a lot of different information out there, but there's not enough human capacity and human computational knowledge to process through all the data, to model the different interactions between different chemicals, to see how certain pills or how certain chemicals will react. That's why it's crucial. It's very, very important to have the scientific background, as well as kind of pair that up with the computational knowledge, the knowledge how to use current technologies to advance this field further. I think that's absolutely critical. So I think there should be definitely more software embedded skills, like such as programming, such as machine learning, AI, data science. Data science is a huge field. huge field, especially right now with the different pharmaceuticals. There's a lot of different data to be taken, not only from the manufacturer, not only IoT data, but data from the different pills themselves. There's not a lot of people who can process this massive amounts of data to make sense of it all.
Super cool stuff. So if you guys want a career changing the world with vaccinations, with biomedical engineering, with medical healthcare advantages and technologies and support systems in general, this is a good place to look. 1% Nation. So Val, again, shout out to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show and enlightening us on what it's like to work within the largest vaccine manufacturing company in the world, what it's like to be a team that has to make decisions on how rapidly to develop things, some of the misnomers out there, and really everything under the sun around the COVID-19 vaccine. Val, again, shout out to you. Thank you so much. Thanks again. How can we find you, Val? We want to make sure that we know where your YouTube channel is and how we can keep up with you. So how can 1% Nation keep in touch with everything that you're up to?
Thanks so much for inviting me for this interview. You can always find me on, I am part of the 1% Nation group, and I'm part of the Facebook chat as well as the Instagram chat. And I also started my own small YouTube channel where I'll be talking about different engineering paths, financial success, and career strategies that I personally found successful. So you can find that all on Val Hustle. That is the YouTube channel that I'm currently running. There should be some links in the description below. Thanks so much, Jake. I think the 1% Nation is definitely some of the most key inspirational mediums and contents for engineers today. Hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And as you build out your team, as you build out your 1% Nation, more and more engineers will come together to build a community and improve the quality of life for all people.
Hey, 1% Nation, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Valentin, and now you know a little bit more about what it's like to develop vaccines, work for a large company who does that, and have a career in healthcare where you can literally change where we're going as a human race. If you're a young engineer and you want to rise to the top 1% of your career, make sure you hit the notification bell and subscribe. Comment below on what you're trying to figure out in your engineering journey, and I can make a video just for that. See you next week in another video, guys. Bye-bye.